Welcome back to the Intuition Incubator. Today, I have a treat. We have Anthony Trucks. Anthony is a former foster kid turned NFL athlete and serial entrepreneur with a unique superpower, making shift happen. Through his dark work methodology, he helps people elevate their identity to match their dreams by tackling the tough internal actions needed for external transformation. After overcoming 30 plus traumatic life events, Anthony has become the go to expert on identity shifts and peak performance. His dark work experience blends neuroscience, psychology, and hard earned life lessons to help anyone achieve their biggest goals. So, buckle up. It's time to make shift happen. Welcome, Anthony.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So, my gosh, there's so much to talk about. Um, Obviously, what's super uh, compelling is that you were a foster kid and
Mhm.
turned into this, superstar that's living the life of your dreams, doing all of the things. Um, and I think sometimes it's really easy for people to, in hindsight, say, they look at you as you are now and you have all the things and everything. And one of the things that I like to bring guests back to, because, we are talking about intuition, and all of us have these experiences, I think, where if we're looking hard enough, we can see when we've made decisions out of our intuition and when we have made decisions not in our intuition. One of the things that I think really impacts all of us and makes it difficult to make intuitive decisions is when we're brought up with these traumas. And even not if we're brought up with
Yep.
traumas, we develop coping mechanisms, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I kind of wanted to start by not in the fame stage, but kind of going back and saying, like, what was what was it like for you coming out of the foster care system? And I've heard you speak on other podcasts about, like, hey, that yeah, there were years. It was dark,
Yeah,
and
you're right.
I wonder if you could just speak to that, the sort of before the aha
Yeah. Well, I
happened for
mean,
you.
Yaha didn't happen for a lot of years. I think that that might have happened to like my 30s, to be quite honest. It's I've always been in a weird space. Now, I do know if you want to call like a kind of a ha you can do more. That took place probably around 15, 16. But I was in the system at 3. I knew nothing as a difference until probably like 14, 15, where I finally got adopted, and I opened my mind and my heart to being adopted, to be quite honest. Like, I always wanna go back to my mom and that family, but there's a reality that I didn't get for a long time, which is that's not the best for me sometimes. The things that we always say we want, we may not realize are not the best for us. You may want that new car, that new job, but, like, you get there and go, "Oh, this is a crappy place, and this is a crappy car," right? So the idea is, I went through this and woke up to a situation. I go, I want to be, locked in this family. So I opened the door to being adopted and severed parental rights and moved forwards from there. And then I stepped into the real life, the real world, we'll call it. And that was one that was, while I was stepping into something new, I still was pulling from the old. We all have that. There's a wiring that took place. There's a way that I perceived my value. And to be honest, I'm still uncovering things. I'm still unpacking things that, like when I was in the NFL, I constantly had a thought of like, do I belong here? Like, it's weird to
Yeah.
say that, but there'd be times I'm in the highest level of the world that is incredibly difficult to get to, that I had to fight and toil and trouble and earn, right? And I still questioned it. And it's such a weird dynamic that we all have these things going on. So for me, going back to those years, like I was out of it, but like immediately after, I wanted to go try something new and I wanted to free myself and go, be open. And it was for me football. So I went and tried football. And like many people who try something new they're excited about, I sucked at it. Wasn't good, didn't have a sense of strength because I'd never done it, and you could call
Yeah.
it imposter syndrome. You could just call it naivete, whatever you want to call it. But the truth is that you can't feel confident about something you've never put time and energy into. You haven't battled past roadblocks with. And
Yeah.
for me, I remember having that feeling of like the initial wave of discomfort and go, nah, I don't want to do this. This feels bad. And so I made a good excuse, like most of us do, to walk away from the goal, walk away from the dream. And it was going to be fine. I mean, if I'd have told you b at its face value, "Hey, look, I didn't start football till I was 14. I was a foster kid. I wasn't allowed to play sports. That's why I never played football." You'd be like, "Oh, yeah, that makes complete sense." Right? It logically does. But for me, I had this at some point in time, a wake-up moment going, I wanna be great." Now, football was the one thing I could direct my focus towards, but it simply was like a personal, internal weird commitment to like, I'm going to be great. And I didn't know what it looked like. What I did know, thankfully, was at 15, I go, I can't do nothing new and get something different. Like that logic hit me like if I'm going this way in life, which I was headed to a place I didn't feel like going, I couldn't keep doing these things and end up way over there. That's just a logic that somehow it hit my head. So I go, well, where do I want to go? And I noticed there were football guys, Jerry Rice, Joe Montana. I'm in this San Francisco Bay Area, looking at these amazing guys. And I go, "Man, I want to be like them. What do they do?" Which really should be our priming question. What do the people do that are in the positions we want to be in? And and for me, I've come to know it to be identity, which is how you function. Like it's who you are when you're not thinking about who you are. The natural habits and patterns and instincts and things that you do. And so at that time, all I noticed was like, all right, well, Jerry Rice runs hills and these guys throw footballs, they catch footballs and they're running routes. And so I'm like, I'm going to do that. So the actions, here's where it shows up. The actions became the things that were very, very difficult. It wasn't they didn't just do it because, like, that was easy for them. Like, they built into that. So I go out here, I'm trying this new thing, right? First off, I already suck at this, right? I still wanna be good at this. I'm having to try things and do things that are completely out of the norm of my character or my current identity, which is what it is for all of us. You wanna be a violinist? Good, go pick up a violin, have no idea how to hold it, no idea to read music, like, you feel like an idiot. But then you go, well, everybody did at some point, and you have to find a way to lean in and do things that are not comfortable. And so I did that. In the beginning, I'm doing it. It's good and it's bad and it's kind of navigating it. But little by little, I would do these things where like I would get made fun of. I'd look at myself and go, "What are you doing?" And by step, I got better and better and better. It was a daily thing. It was arduous and it was long. But then when I came out of it a different human. And it wasn't a different physical human. If you wanna talk about the idea of, like, the intuition, the base, and the core, I think that there's always that little voice that is small and quiet that's telling you you can do it. However, I don't know if you've ever been to a room where people are yelling, the loudest voice is the one you pay attention to.
Yeah.
And at the time, the loudest voice says, "You suck, you never played football, what are you doing?" What the little voice said, "But you can." And the big voice said, "No, you're dumb, what do you get out of here, you can't go in the weight room," right? The little voice said, "No, you can do this." And so little by little, I kept listening to the little voice, and then eventually got louder and got louder and got louder to where it was the loudest voice in the room. And that was the thing that triggered me to have this internal mentality, which showed up on the football field, which was real simple, but I have done too much work in the dark to lose in the light. I made an identity shift to being that guy now. And I wasn't bigger and faster and stronger. I was still a little guy, but the dog in me was ready to fight. He'd done too much preparation. He'd put the time in. I identified as a capable football player now. So if the ball's in the air, I'm going to catch that football. It's mine. If it's you have the football, I'm going to tackle you. You don't get by me. If I have the football, I'm running past you. I deserve that. I've earned that. And for me, it was kind of simply listening to the little voice in me that had this passion for the game, that believed it was possible somewhere out there and leaned into doing the uncomfortable things that most people would not do.
Yeah. Okay. There's so much to unpack there. So, what's crazy is was so interesting is that you had this at like 15. And, when I was a little girl, my mother used to say I would get very, very frustrated because I couldn't tie my shoe or I couldn't read. And she would say, Abby, why would you know how to do that before you've learned? They haven't even taught you how to read yet. Why
True.
would you know that?
Yeah.
But I had a mentality, right? Like my personality parts or whatever that I came down here with had this idea that I think a lot of us have. And to be perfectly honest with you, it's taken decades for me, to really understand that because I think it's just so easy for us to say, "Oh, well, but Anthony, I mean, he's got all these he had all these advantages." Yeah, you have the advantages now. You had negative advantages then,
Yeah,
right?
negative for
And
sure.
so I feel that and it's funny because I'm just about to, like, rename some of my stuff, having to do with overcoming fear, or,
Yeah.
more appropriately, it would be like scared shitless with Abby.
All right.
Um, because fear, I feel like, is what gets in our way
Always does.
so much
Mhm.
of having the clarity, of trying all the new things, of getting in touch with the intuition, and we have all of these excuses, all of these
We do.
buffers.
But the problem is while fear is prominent and it's supposed to be present, people don't pursue it with a positive mentality. They look at it as this
Yeah.
it's this negative, and it's crazy to think of it this way. I don't know if back then that like when I was doing things that facing the fear was the issue. I had the fear. I think I just got pissed off enough to where I had more courage than fear.
Hmm.
And it's as logical for us to think about. Everybody approaches something with a level of fear into it. Like I get on an airplane every time I go out travel somewhere. The level of fear, it's usually close to zero, right? But a little bit exists. But at some point, I was like, there's people that are in there freaking out and they're breathing heavy. And the thing is, but they're on the plane. They were courageous enough to push past it. I think so. You're right. A lot of people have these fears, and what's crazy about it is this conversation has been had for probably hundreds of years by now, at least the last decade plus. And so many times, it's crazy to me that while our logical brain knows something, we will not let the emotional brain take their hands off the wheel. Right. So the emotional fear, the brain starts running crazy, and the logic brain goes, "Yeah, but I'm probably not gonna die. Like, if I go out there and I make a podcast or I wanna try this thing and I don't do well, I'm not gonna die." But for some reason, I have this emotional brain going, "Yeah, you are," and it's hitting the gas and going, "Yeah. Oh, no." It's wild, and no one cares about you the way you think, like your family might, you know? Yeah, and so but once you go past that, once you actually look at it as either being one is you remove you add courage to the sauce, like you say, "Okay, I'm gonna bring courage to it," or you go, "There's not a real reason to be afraid," until that becomes a logical process that can then take the wheel back from the emotional piece, you get stuck in a worse emotional place, which is regret. And I think that's the one that most people don't pay attention to because it's not the immediacy. But I've met enough people in my life to have fear myself around what regret will do to me. I've met people that are older than me that have walked through the years and they go, I wish I would have. And I go, man, you can see it in their soul. Like they're looking at this one chance they had at life. And now they're past the prime and they just got to kind of make the most of it, convince themselves they're happy with it when you can see that they're not. And then that scares me the most. So now I
Well,
go,
and
oh, I'm not doing that.
yeah, and what happens is, is that, you hit a certain age and then you have regret that then you tell yourself, I'm too old to do it now. Like that's and then so then you just give up. And that's
Yeah,
that's insane, right?
it is.
Because there's such a long life.
It's not even the truth, man. You're
It's not
never
even the
told,
truth.
never it was crazy. I feel like none of the things that we use as excuses that make us feel good are ever correct. I've told people, and I will live and die by this, you get excuses or you get achievements, but you can never have both of them.
Mm.
You can make an excuse for why it didn't happen. You're gonna get the outside of that, right? Or you find a way to lean in and go, "Forget the excuse, I'm gonna do it." So say you go, "I'm too old." Nah, you're just not willing to learn something new. You're not willing to put all the, we'll call it accrued success on the line to look stupid. And the
Mm.
truth is, realistically, there's people that go, "I'm too young," right? These people, it's like weird. Like, no, youth's gonna be your advantage. You're young, you're tapped into a stream that most people that are older don't have. So if you can, go through that and pull something valuable, you're gonna be great. And then you can say, "I'm too old," but no, you have wisdom from life experience that the young people need. Like, there's such a carryover that people don't pay attention to because what they do is they go, "It's gonna be scary, it's gonna be hard," and their brain goes and grabs for something that will alleviate them of having to do the scary thing, but still not feel like a loser and choosing not to go after it. So they make this good excuse. "Oh, you know what? I'm just too old. Okay, I feel good now." And the truth is, you're gonna forwardly look at 2, 3 years later and go, "Man, I could have, I should have. Man, look at Bob did it. Susan did it. Golly, what was I thinking?" Right? And I don't want that moment. So I go, whatever I give myself as an excuse to not move, I now can trigger my brain to go, "Hey, Aunt, slow down. Hold on. What are you talking about, man? What do you mean?" And I have a little internal conversation. I go, "Yeah, that's a dumb idea. It's a dumb excuse. Let's roll." And I move.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this idea of moving because it is the idea of action, right? Like we cannot sit in our minds and just run around and around and around and around. And in fact, sometimes the most intuitive moments come when we're in motion,
They
when
always
we're
do.
just doing something.
No, I think they all do. I think everything that you're looking for is in motion. I think there's an overload of courses in the world nowadays. And funny thing is I sell courses, you know? The
Right.
the truth though, is I wrote, "Be very transparent with folks. I'm gonna give you information, but what you really need, you will never get until you're in motion. You will never figure out the true thing you need to work on. You'll never figure out the true value of what it is. You can come here and sit in the safety of consumption," which I think there's a safety in consumption. There's this book I get to read, and a course I get to go to, and a seminar I get to attend. Yeah, it's all great. Now, when you've got that in your head, go do it. Now it gets scary. Now people fall short. And so there's a safety in learning and consuming and everything. And I'm real big on you won't find out the lessons that life has for you until you actually go to class. And class is where that's
Out
life.
there.
It's
Yeah.
having to go make this new message to the world and say, "What do you think about this? Hey, I developed this thing. You pay for it, right? I'm gonna go take this new, class and go try to apply for a new job. I'm gonna get a promotion." All these little
No.
things that are going out there, none of it actually is presented to you as opportunities to learn until you're making actions towards it or putting yourself in emotion.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that happens a lot, I was just speaking with someone before this, but even as I think about it for like young people today, um, we think we have to know exactly what it is that we're going to do,
Yeah.
and have
Um,
to have total clarity. But if I had a dime for every moment that went by that I didn't have clarity because I really honestly was too afraid to have it, I was too afraid to know because then what if I knew and I tried and I failed? Oh my
yeah,
God, you
yeah,
know, and it's not about that, right? It's just about do something. It
yeah.
doesn't have to be the thing. That something, I tell this to my kids
Bingo.
all the time, is gonna lead to the next thing.
Always does. My son is 20 years old. He's a junior in college. He's about a year and a half will graduate. We just had this conversation yesterday because he's in a position now where he's never really like my wife and I are always like, "Hey, what are you gonna do?" "I don't know. I'm doing this." He's doing physics and stuff and go, "Okay." Eventually, he wants to go to grad school. You go, "Okay, great. We're looking, grad school. What do you want to do?" He goes, I don't know. Like, you have to figure out, what pathway to go down. Okay, what path you to go down? Well, I got to choose an actual like area of focus. I go, "What's that?" He goes, "I don't know yet." I go, "Son, man, you got to choose one because here's the problem that none of us are thinking about. You're already heading somewhere. You are already going somewhere. The problem is you don't even know where that's at. So ideally, you're thinking, I'm gonna sit here and I don't want to go in the wrong place. You're already going, so you're already going to the wrong place. Right? That's kind of the crazy part about it. But then I explained to him like my journey. I was a guy that's, I got through the foster care world and I went and said, I'm going to play football. So I played football. I got a college scholarship, played college scholarship, did my whole thing there. Played in the NFL. Thought I was going to do that till I retire. Got to the point of retirement, which wasn't my point. I got an injury, lost my career.
Mhm.
I come home. I have a degree in kinesiology. I've done the football thing. Oh, let me open a gym. I open a gym. I'm doing that. I get asked to start speaking on fitness. Start speaking on fitness. I get asked to put a proposal together for a company to help their entire massive company alleviate strains and sprains. I do that. I get introduced to somebody who talks about, hey, if you have a personal story, that can actually be something beyond what you're doing now. That can actually take a message of the world. I go, let me look into that. So start doing that. And so I now leave the gym. I go speak, which I do now, and I'm in a position where I get to work with companies like Amazon and PayPal and T-Mobile and ClickFunnels and Chick-fil-A and these crazy cool brands. And I explained to him, I go, son, when I was in college, I started out with a degree goal-wise in computer science. Then it was business. Then it was physiology. Now I probably should have been a communications major based on what I do. I go, the idea is I just found things. Here's the pathway for all of us, Abby. We're all looking for the purpose we're supposed to have that be on this planet. I think it's a beautiful gift, but all gifts are earned. Even if it's from somebody, like the gift is typically earned. And here's how I think the gift shows up of purpose, clarity of purpose. At some point in time, you get curious. The
Mhm.
curiosity is a golden space because what it is, it's a place where you're able to give time to something without counting the hours. You do it, you read it, you get enamored by it. It's cool. You
Slow.
find communities about it. Like it's just you're given 20 hours of this thing in this week, and it's like, oh, right. As opposed to you give me 20 hours of like doing yard work. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that, but I'm doing it. And then all of a sudden, the curiosity, it turns into this passion you start feeling kind of rise in you. Like you love to tell people about it. You want to go take trips and you start collecting things about it. You're watching shows on it. You're buying clothes. Everything's attached to it. And then you're like, oh, this is so amazing. Then all of a sudden, in that journey, you're moving, right? It's a big thing. You're in motion, walking down a path. I find that people stumble into their pothole of purpose. They kind of,
Mm.
oh,
Mhm.
what's
Yeah.
this? Right?
Yeah,
You
but
would
doesn't then the voice come in for so many people? Well, for example, I love talking to people. I love whatever. Oh, but that's not, I can't make a living out of that. I can't do that. The voice comes in and says, just poos all over it. And it's like, well, that's ridiculous. And
Well, that
then
comes
you're
in
out of alignment.
yeah, that comes in around the passion space, to be honest, and that's why it's a gift because you have to earn past that moment. My wife,
When
she'll tell you, my best friend, they'll tell you, years ago when I go, "I wanna be a speaker for a living," they go, "No, it's not a real job. Do something else." I'm for real. Prior to that, I wanted to open a gym business. My best friend and my wife were like, I was doing poorly, like, "Close it down, get a regular job, file for bankruptcy, just do that," right? So I'm known as the guy that does weird stuff, and it's I don't always have immediate support with stuff, and that's okay. Like, the reality is when I get passionate about it personally, that's just par for the course, man. That lets me know I'm on to the right thing. When somebody else goes, "Nah, that's stupid." I go, "Oh, well, I'm passionate about it. I see somebody else doing it already. So if someone's doing it, it can be done. You may not believe it. That's cool, but I think it can be done. Let's rock." And so I press. But most people, they don't pay that price. They don't cross that
Yeah.
line. So they don't earn the purpose or the clarity of purpose, at least.
It sounds super intuitive. Like, it sounds like you just have a knowing inside yourself in that moment. I mean, what do you think intuition is? How do you think about intuition?
I think it's my gut. I think if I can make it as logical as possible, I believe that every day we're taking in millions of data points of information, facial expressions, things we read that just it gets pulled and popped back into our subconscious brain. My conscious mind can't hold all that information. Nobody's can, right? But it's there. It exists. It's floating around. I think it's always cooking back there, right? And after a while, like something comes in, your conscious brain misses it. It shoots back to your I think it's your hippocampus. I'm not sure where it's all kept back there. And it's all stored. And then all of a sudden it throws something forward and it goes, "Hey, listen,
Mhm.
this is, and
Yeah.
it says something to you. And then you can choose in that moment, do I trust it or not? At this point in time, I've learned to trust it. I get a little tickle. I go, oh, I should do that. Now, the reason why is because I've done enough things where I've had that happen. And I've not listened and I've noticed the mistake. Then I notice, well, why didn't I take it? I go, I was worried it might not work out, something may have wrong. And I go, well, when I did take it, it did work out. Why? Did I know better? Did I know? I go, no. In that moment, I just took it and I went, but I trusted that I could make it right. Like it may not
Yeah.
be perfect, but I know I can perfect it along the way. So there's a duality. The intuition for me is just a bunch of information floating around that I've already consumed and absorbed. And my brain, the subconscious level is throwing it back and hey, I got all this information back here. Conscious brain, there's a collection of information. Here, take this real quick. And I go, oh yeah. So I feel it. Now I go, let me move on it. And I move on it. It's a little different if you want to call it beyond this. I move on it when the majority of people tell me I shouldn't. And the majority of people is never what I want to follow. Because statistically, the majority of people are unhappy, are overweight, are they're not in groove with their life. The majority of people aren't at that's why there's the 1 to 3% of people. Because the majority of people aren't up there. So I go, if the majority is telling me something, I should immediately question it.
That is so brilliant. That is so true because everybody is always like, well, let me take everybody's temperature. And if everybody's on board, then that's what I should do. But why would you take the temperature of people who are not happy and not
Yeah.
healthy
All the time.
and not, it's, that is so brilliant. It's so true,
Yeah, that's what I
right?
do. That's how I actually live my life now. I do things that people in fact, at one point, my buddy Jay goes, "Dude, you're the weird friend." I go, "No, that's a great thing." I say, "I like being the weird friend. I don't actively choose to do weird things. It just seems abnormal to your world." Now, I love you. I mean, different values of life, and that's why we're great because we can have different views, but also be very connected. It's just we love each other as humans. But truth is, if I was to follow the majority of people's perspectives, I'd be unhappy like them. I'd be unfulfilled like them. I wouldn't be able to be here with you and do this. Like I just to be honest, I woke up this morning at 5:30 with my son. We went and got a lift, read the Bible, got a lift in together. After the lift, I came in the house, did a little bit of computer work. Wife took the kids to school. She came home. Me and her, I was like, I got 15 minutes to kill. Let's go cuddle in bed. So we went upstairs, just cuddled in bed a little bit. I got a little tired. I kind of took a nap. Was supposed to take. And then I woke up at like 10:15. I came down here, filmed some videos real quick, and then we're on. That's the day. The only reason this is possible for me is because at some point I go, I want to be a speaker. And people said that's a dumb idea. and I built it into a business that makes me 7 figures a year, and I have a ton of freedom, and I work technically 24 hours a year doing this stuff. Like, there's a lot of work and preparation, right? But on a stage, I do 24 speeches a year. And so I had to be weird to create this kind of freedom. If I don't, then I have to look at everybody else and go, man, that could have been me.
But and not only that, the things, the work and the preparation, I'm guessing, because this is how I feel, is stuff that you love doing. Like you
Oh, it's
enjoy
did.
doing those things, the content creation, the talking to people, the whatever, all of the meeting with your team, all of the stuff that needs to happen. There's always
Yeah.
those items that we don't love, but
Oh, it's always, yeah. That's probably majority more that I don't than I do. But I will tell you this. There are some things we have to do that we don't wanna do, and they're leading to place we don't wanna have. The whole idea of people go buy these nicest houses and stuff to then go to a job they don't wanna go to be around people they don't wanna be around just to afford it, never experience it. For me, thankfully, I do have the majority of stuff I enjoy doing, but, like, I don't love always filming content, if I'm being honest. It's not the joyous part of my life. I love coaching clients. I love talking to people. I love doing this, but to sit here in a room and, like, be prompted to bring energy and create a video, I don't love it, but I will say this, if I don't do that, I don't get to do what I love.
yeah,
So there's
but
gonna be a
don't you
thing
do that? Don't you only do that when you're I find I can't do that if I'm not inspired to do it. And if I'm
that yeah.
inspired, I'm so excited to share the message that I'm like, "Where's the camera?"
I also think that you can change your, like, emotional framing and state by physical motion. So there are, yes, definitely. For example, like, when I don't wanna do things, I don't sit in my head, I move. Like, I'll do things, like, I'll do some, like, tapping, I'll do some movements of arms, I'll do some chest pass, like, I'll actually when I played football, you had to amp yourself up. Pregame, you gotta go crazy in your head, and you get the thing, you go, "Alright, let's go," right? Now, I do know, I think Tony Robbins calls it, like, changing your state. Like, you have the ability to change your state actively. And so 100% there's things I don't wanna do, but, like, I go, "Okay, if I listen to that voice, let's listen to the voice everybody else would listen to." I'd have what they would all have. I want more. What do? I get to be in the driver's seat today. I control this today. So what do? I control me. How do I control me? Well, I got to get myself moving. If that's a thing, I'll do it. So I'll like prime myself and I move and I get going and then I'm good to go for, a couple hours. And then at some point I'll shut it down. But yes, there are a ton of little unique ways that I got to think about who I am and how I function and be the weird guy who's in the house slapping his chest and yelling for no reason, right? But if it gets me amped up for content, I'll do it. So I can, on one hand, not love it. On the other hand, do it like I love it.
Mhm. Yeah, and move into that place. I've also heard you talk about which, you know, I I talk a lot about as well, like, the guy who is hanging out with his family is not the same guy
No,
that is putting his foot on the gas to build the business.
no, it's
And
different. View.
it's a different guy, right? It's a different identity in that moment. It's a different personality part. And if the guy that wants to lay around with his family is out, then the guy that wants to get stuff done is either gonna have to sit down or he's gonna have to sit down the guy that wants to sit
Yep.
around with family.
A lot of ways, yeah. The thing is this is we all have identities, and I believe that we all assume it's the same one, and it's not. There's different expressions at multiple different stages in life. If I was the guy I am when I'm on a stage in a hotel lobby, they would arrest me. Like this, yeah, like this guy's loud. He's running around. He's yelling at people. Like what's telling dumb story. Like it's wild, right? If I was the guy I am with my wife, it'd be weird. Like I'd probably get arrested too for being weirdly, awkwardly intimate in public. It's just there's a different personality expression, right? It's the same guy. Now the problem is the expression of the identity that you need, and sometimes you have to call on that. You have to activate it sometimes. And yes, there are ones that the world doesn't typically see. So the guy you see now, the happy, joyous guy who can sit here, who's built this, created this cool business, he is not the guy who built it. I'm the guy who's here running it. The guy who built it is the guy that when it was midnight and something had to get done, or it's 5 in the morning and it got to get written out, or someone had to go from the team, or I had to create this thing or film content. That's the guy that could hunker down, he can put a timer on. I can tune everything out, not get distracted, and I can flow for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. I can get up and
Yeah.
find out something got done wrong and get pissed, and I can go dive in and do it again. I'm the guy that realizes people that work for me that I am responsible for their income, for their family. That guy isn't the, "Oh, it's gonna be okay." That guy's not
Right.
that guy, and that's okay. That guy shows up as needed to express properly where he's needed. And all of us have to understand that that's the case, because if not, then we'll try to bring the wrong person to the wrong situation, and we'll assume we're the wrong person for the situation when we're not. As a core, collectively, you're perfect for it. You just brought the wrong identity out, or you haven't developed the one you need for that moment yet.
I totally agree. Or the wrong one is out. Like sometimes you wake up and just the wrong one's out.
It's true.
Like yesterday I woke up and I was like, damn, where'd the one I have got this whole block of time? Where'd she go? She
I
doesn't
know.
want to do anything,
I
you
know.
know? And
Yep.
I had to drag myself out on a walking meditation, like direct and that's exactly what it was. It was
But
drag
that's
my
what
body
greatness
out.
requires. That's the greatness. Like, that is what it requires. That's the price of admission. Here's the thing. A lot of people are all driven off the feeling. How do I feel today? Right. And I go, if you base your actions off of feelings, you're going to fail. You're going to fail 100%. You're going to fail. I guarantee if you're feeling, you have to go, I'm a person that will be disciplined. So you follow the plan, not the emotion. And discipline means I have a plan. It is in place. Can I make sure when I show up to that moment that I could, like you just said, I can bring that person out when they need to be so they can get the job done? Because if
Or
not,
shift the state, bring the person to shift the state so that the right one
okay.
shows up.
Yeah,
But
because
I
greatness
think so
requires
much
that.
of what happens is then we beat ourselves up, because what you're talking about, right? And as an athlete, right? Like I did was don't have that. I grew up nice little Jewish girl in New England. I was like, oh, that hurts. And so this idea of like drive, 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 that was not part of my world until much later.
Yeah, it's
And
fine.
so but I think what happens and, still, I mean, how much yeah, I mean, but I think what happens is that then it's like, "Well, Anthony says I've gotta drive, drive, drive," and I didn't, and so then all the old voices come back.
They
"I
can.
suck. I didn't do it. Da, da, da,
Yeah.
da," and before we know it, people, like, they've beaten themselves back into submission with that loud voice.
There's a couple things to keep in mind here too, because there is we're like we'll call it like an emotional, philosophical state. There's also a physiological piece of this too. But it's in that same track for now. You got to realize that football was not the only way you can develop that. You could have been a person that you cut down trees. You went through like it's just a matter of what did you get involved in or experience. I call it a dark work experience for our work because it's the things you experience that rewire you the right way, neurologically and psychologically. It does not have to be football. But what has to happen is we have to grasp that, yes, we'll get to those moments if I didn't get it done and I'll beat myself up. And it took me a lot of years because I would do the same thing. I go 8 hours on my calendar. I'm going to do this on this hour, this on this hour, this on this hour, all through the eight. I'd find myself in like hour four, tanked. And then all of a sudden, I didn't get the rest of the four things done. I closed the day off going, man, I suck. I only got half the
Mhm.
things done. What's wrong with me? Right. And I started realizing that there's actually this mental ability that some people don't realize has to be built up. And so if you look at there's a study done by Inc. magazine, and it took into account people, I don't know what exact people, but it's mostly people working for companies, took into account their ability to work and focus over an 8 hour day. They found that the max, well, maybe the average, right, which was closer to the max, was 2 hours and 57 minutes of focused effort, which means in an 8 hour day, most people get 3 hours. So when you stack up 8 hours on an 8 hour day, you're physiologically setting yourself up for failure. So what I do now is I may have 6, 7 hours in a day. I'm very keen on being clear of what goes into those days. I never have more than 4 hours of actual focused work. I might stretch to fifth if it's an airplane type situation. I can force my brain there, but I got to put a break in somewhere. And what this does, it allows me to know, hey, I'm pushing myself to get this thing done. I might have more I can put on, but I don't want to feel like an idiot afterwards by not getting it done. So I cap it at 4. And now I close the day going, I got it done. I feel really, really good. I'm excited. The next day comes up and I could have put those extra 4 hours into that day. I show up, I get those things done. At the end of a week, I feel like a superhero, not like an idiot.
And it's a beautiful hack, right? To sort of get around that voice that naturally is gonna wanna beat yourself up, to
Yeah,
structure it from the get-go of like,
true.
"Okay, look, this is the we're gonna define success right here. This is it. If we can put focused effort in for this amount of time, and that's success." And
That's
it's
it. You
so
train.
important to finish off as a champ, right?
Yeah, you have to. Because if think about it, how you if we're talking about feelings, if you have the feelings, it helps with pushing yourself to be disciplined. Like, well, I may have a plan in place and I got to show up and get moving on it. It's easier when I feel a little bit better. It just takes more willpower if I don't. And if I know yesterday, at the end of the day, and I feel like an idiot, it's just harder to move today, right? But if I close the
Right.
day off and I go, yeah, I get that cool dopamine dump, I feel good. And
Yeah.
here's the other piece of it. What I don't think people pay attention to when you have unfinished business is it weighs on you. It sits there and it drags on you. And then now what happens is you have I just like an unnecessary like tiredness and fatigue from not having got it done, and it lingers. And so you don't in your time when you're off, you're not off. So for me, what was good is like I now can close my day. The tasks are done. I shut my brain down. I just go, I'm just dad and I'm a husband and I'm just here. And so I'm not carrying weight around. I'm loose and I'm doing my thing, right? So I go to work the next day. I show up ready to rock. I'm loose. But if I don't, I'm in there the rest of the day and I'm thinking about it and it's weighing me down. And there's an energy expenditure of the anxiety around it not being completed. So when I show up the next day, I'm emotionally and mentally fatigued because I got this
Yeah,
thing.
and that we're leaking emotional energy, right?
Yeah,
And it's I mean, the reserves.
it's that
Yeah.
simple. And the problem that I found for most folks, this even goes deeper. It's a whole other tangent, I guess. Probably don't talk about these things much, but for me, I go, that all comes to planning because it really is for me. I go, there's a lot of things we all want to do. And if I'm going to look at probably 90% of people's calendars, the majority of stuff is scheduled up to the next 2 weeks. Like most people's calendar is like 2 weeks out, packed, like always 2 weeks out. So I started realizing is the 2 week window is like we think that's all we have to work. And I go, no, you have like endless time to work, folks. So for me, my calendar's out like 6 weeks. And most time I don't allow people to book me within like a 4 week period. Not always. It depends on when I get reached out for, if I do have time. But I'm planning things out 5, 6 weeks. So what happens is the thing I think has to get done, it will get done, but I might not start it for 3 weeks, which gives me a
Mm.
less of anxiety on my heart so I can work on the thing I got to work on today without having the weight of that other thing here. It's written in, it's scheduled, it's coordinated where it's supposed to be. I'm just living my life. So now everything's not in this jam-packed constant struggle and constant pace of I'm almost there. I'm busy. I'm not always busy. Like I
It's
may have,
another great tip. I wanna highlight this for the audience because you've given so many really good tips, and what I love about that one is, again, it's a way to tame the animal, right? Like, the animal that is the brain and the body that is like, "Well, I gotta do all the things," and most people, they just have a list. A list is not a plan, right?
no,
Like and
no, it's
so
not.
that's a great tip. You have something, you put it on your calendar so your brain knows it's there. You can calm the beast. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Mhm.
Getting taken care of, it's gonna be handled. Now we can breathe for this 3 weeks and focus here.
Yeah, that's it. It's how it
I
functions.
love
That's how
that.
I do it. It gives me a lot of peace. This is also like 11 years of figuring all this stuff out, by the way. But that's what allows me to go, at the end of the day, my goal is this core big goal is I need to continue doing. And the reason is because I need to continue becoming. Like
Mm,
I called a dominator's identity. It's the ability to govern and control. There's a whole manifesto around what this means. And it's the most empowered version of you. Let's just call it that. It's the one that shows up and goes, I got this without question, right? The
mhm.
only reason that person exists is because of what this person who I am has accomplished and provided proof of. So if I don't have something that provides proof to me of how dope I am, I don't have that chip on my shoulder. So I needed to clear the way to make it way easier for me to accomplish things, to feel amazing and to see who I could be and to see what I could get done. All the things I'm talking about is not to be more effective and more efficient. It's to be able to look at myself and go, I got that done, that done, that done, that done. Hell yes, I could probably get that done if I tried for it. Without having these things that I'm getting myself to accomplish and complete, I just am a guy that has proof of unfinished business.
I have so many questions to ask you. So the the amazing thing about this and I need to write a note so I don't remember the next thing because you keep giving me something else I wanna ask you.
My bad.
I mean, the amazing thing about this really is that you this just kind of came to you. Like this, you just the lessons just built on themselves. This
Damn, well,
idea of at 15, to be able to just sort of recognize that with the trauma that you didn't have any experience of anyone saying to you, You could do it, Anthony. Let me teach you how to do this. Let me teach you, like, let me teach you how to have a calendar and let me, like, no one did any of that.
No, no, well, I didn't do calendar stuff till, like, out of college, kind of like middle of the gym years. You know what it is I inherently think of this one thing, which is, "I'm stupid, someone can do it better. What problem do I have? Who solved the problem?" Like, that's the intelligence I have. So to an extent, like, I'm obviously not an idiot, but we're not the first person to face this problem we're facing, ever, ever. And so when I'm battling a problem and I can't seem to knock through it, I stop and go, "Why am I still battling this? Like, why have I not found the solution to this?" And I go, "Well, maybe I'm not supposed to find them out. Who has?" And so I get really good at Googling things and asking questions and looking for help. My ego gets out of the way.
But
That's one of the great.
even that, no one taught that to you. Like you had, like you had that, that sense of like, listen, someone has the answer. And so many, I think, of us, we don't have that. We stay in this place of, I must be a loser.
Yeah, I also think that part of it's the ego, and none of us wanna look stupid, especially in this whole, visceral world of social media and how great you have to present yourself every single day. So asking for help makes you
Yes.
look like you're weak when really it doesn't. It's the strongest thing you can do. So for me, I got to a point where I borderline don't care if I ask for help. Like I'll ask for directions. I'm a dude, but if I know where I'm going, I'm not gonna drive in circles and waste my gas. Like I'm gonna ask, "Hey, bro, where are we at right now?" And so the idea is I've noticed over my period of life that there are great people who do great things, and me asking for help from someone is not a negative approach to me. It's actually said that there's wisdom there because I can pay the dumb tax, which could cost me time and money and energy and problems, or I could invest in what I got to invest in or ask the right questions. So yeah, there was a certain point in time where I would just notice I'm battling something. It's frustrating. Who solved this? Like who else in the
And
world?
furthermore, who doesn't love to share what they know?
They
Right?
love
Like,
doing it.
I've never had anybody ask me to pick my brain that I haven't joyously gone there,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And been like,
100%.
"Absolutely."
Yeah, and if they're willing to
Well,
ask, usually I say yes.
yeah. So tell us about the dark work, 'cause
Yeah,
I wanna hear more about that and what that means and
yeah. It's the, man, it's the beauty of life in ways people don't see. Here's what it is. It's the work you do in the dark that allows you to win in the light. There's there's a simplicity to it, a beauty to it, but there's also a great difficulty to it. It's the ability to embrace the things that are, unsexy, that are, not seen as normal. It's the things that are misunderstood, often ridiculed. It's the stuff you do when you're the only person cheering for you, when no one else is in the background saying you can even do it. That's the dark work. But what it does is it on two sides benefits your life immensely. On one side, it is where you develop the skills that make you dangerous, like the intelligence, the understanding, the information. It's really what it is. It's the place where most people go and spend time, the uncounted and sometimes counted hours that you get this wealth of insight and information that it makes you untouchable. The other thing it does is it creates within you an identity that is completely committed to seeing that information be used properly. It's the idea that you will not settle for less than you believe you deserve. If me and you are sitting here, there's two pieces of cake on the table and you want a piece of cake, and I've said, "This is your cake, Abby," and I go grab your cake, you might bite my hand. No, no, no. That's my cake. I deserve that cake, right? When you believe you deserve something because you've done whatever it is or it's yours, you fight for it. The problem is most people don't do the work and they show up to defining moments in their life and they don't fight for stuff because they don't believe they deserve it. And so
so
for me,
give us an example of dark work. Give me an
for
example. What is that?
let's put it this way. Let's say, we'll call this podcast world, right? Let's say the podcast world comes up. Let's say you've been doing it for a couple years, been building things, and let's say somebody walks up and goes, "Hey, I don't think you're a very good podcaster. I don't think you've done a good enough job at this." Right? A person that is behind the scenes. Let's just say you've recorded 500 episodes, you've edited them, you've looked into how to grow them, you've made content and clips, you've learned how to be a better interviewer, you've read books interviewing, you've had conversations with people, you've had people watch your different stuff and taken some hard feedback on how to be a better interviewer. You've learned how to X, Y, and Z, right? When you in your heart of hearts knows you've put in those hours and somebody says it, you look at them and everything comes out of you like this, like, I don't know who you like, you find that part of you, right? You fight to be able to say, "No, hell no. Listen, you're tripping. This is who I am," right? you battle differently. If you haven't done that and they say that, your heart hurts. "Oh, I'm
Well,
not good. What do you mean?" Like, you know? Or for me, I look at it as, the imposter syndrome people have. I tie this back to the athletes. I look at guys and girls like your Serena Williams, your Tom Brady's, your Michael Jordan's, Kobe Bryant's, right? I look at them and there was this different kind of dog in them when the moments got rough. When it's on the line, they didn't have this whole like worry look or like trying to hype themselves up. It was like dark and stoic.
yeah.
And I go, where are they at with this? And what it was is I've noticed they were going back to the place where they know they outworked their competition. So it wasn't this, what if I mess up? It was, you just made a mistake. You have no idea if I'm about to hit you. You know, like there's this different sense of
That
like, let me loose. I'm about to murder you, right? There's a different animal. And the only difference between that mentality and the other person is what work was done when no one was watching. That's it.
mm, mhm.
That's where you have that certainty, that drive. That's why Steph Curry, who's shooting 500 plus shots a day for years, he's got millions of shots in. We've seen him take maybe 3,000 shots attempts, you know, and he's made a good chunk of those. But it's the millions that he's taken that gives him the confidence that when you're out there and the ball's in his hand, he's like, "Oh, you messed up." Like it's a not like, what if I don't make it? And so that's the thing is when you do that dark work, you enter your life with a different level of certainty, which is really tied to a different identity. You develop a person, you've rewired that person. It allows you to show up and have the skill sets, but the brazenness to deploy them so you can shine brighter.
And if I'm understanding that correctly, the way that I hear that is that it really can also be inner work. Like I'll give
A
you an
lot
example.
is.
My son, I have a 21-year-old son who's negotiating a new position. And we were talking about it the other day. He called me, he said he's nervous because he really wants a job. It's kind of a big deal.
Mhm.
And he's saying, well, and I just need enough to pay my bills and blah, blah, blah. I said, no, 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 no. No, when it comes to money, we always want to be in fair exchange. This isn't about them giving you enough to pay your bills. No one cares about your bills.
Yeah.
This is about what if your bills are only 500 a month? That's a random number. What if they're 10,000 a month? What is your worth? And because he has done so much work, dark work, I think this is on his worth and his
Yeah.
value, that made sense to him like that. And he was
Good.
like, oh, yeah, no,
Keep
you're
it up.
right. I want to be paid my worth. And
Yeah.
not like, "Oh, I'm worth all this." Like, I'm like, "You don't have to be all conditioning about it. There's no conditions. You're
Yeah.
interviewing them, they're interviewing you."
Build it up.
You know?
I will say that well, it's not gonna be fun for you to hear this, but there is a level of work he's done that's not been the work enough to have him have to be told that.
Oh,
So,
sure. It's a
right? So you
stage, it's a step.
now it doesn't mean his thing. There's varying degrees of dark. My son and I, we're working out in the morning right now, and he's a football player, and my thing is he wants to play football. I'm gonna help him get there. I have intentionally put reps and sets and weights on the sheet to where of 4 sets, he's not gonna get through the second one without help from me. Sounds weird to
Mhm.
say it this way.
Yeah.
It's very
No, I
intentional.
love it.
I
I
realize
love
that
it.
he doesn't have a certain fight, and when he's in the football field, and I'm not gonna put him into a fist fight, so I go, "Where can I get in a fight?" He can fight the bar. How do I get him to fight the bar? Let him get into the bar on his own, and eventually he dies, and I'm gonna make him fight through 12 reps where he can't move, literally. And the reason's this: I could give him a weight he can get through and get it done, and he's doing the work. He's out there in the morning, he's getting a burn on his chest, a little bit difficult, right? But when this dude has to fight at this level, like he's almost puking doing bench press workouts because I need him to be in the middle of a football game and instinctually go, ain't no way I had to fight through these sets for the last 7 months and you across from me about to take this ball. Let's go. There's not a question of whether or not he deserved to get that touchdown, that tackle, right? So your son, I say my son's 20 years old too. He wants to be an Olympian. I have the same conversations with him. I'm like, I don't care what you do. If you aren't operating at a level to where in your training and your preparation, you are I'm talking almost dying. Like and it may not
Yeah.
be physical, it could be an emotional death of like, I don't want to do this, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
the harder that dark work is, the harder you push yourself and accomplish it past a point, the more your brain goes, I am a monster. I'm not settling for less than what I deserve. Because the biggest thing, humans will settle for what they believe they deserve. So for some reason, and this is again, it's not a knock, his level of effort gave him this mentality of he deserves X. But if he knows he deserves this, he ain't coming to you. He's like, "Hey, mom, I negotiated for something at high level." Like, it's almost crazy. And so for me, it's to go, yeah, part of it is realizing what it is. Two is realizing what it has to actually look like in your preparation, what your stuff should be. Because if you look at the folks that are the most dominant, they have different minds. They seem crazy to us, and they are because they have wired themselves to get to that point where 99.9% of people go, "This is too far. I'm gonna go ahead and take a chill pill." And they go, "Now I get to go." Like Arnold Schwarzenegger used to say, the set doesn't begin until it starts to burn.
Yeah.
And I
Well, and
love
they
that.
say like the biggest minds are they're delusional. They were delusional. That's
Or
how
you
they got to where they were.
you have to be. Dude, I used to get actually pissed at myself when I would get tired or I couldn't move something. I would be able to go inside and get actually angry at myself, and that would move me. It's a crazy place. I'm separate. Like, I'm separate from the world. I'm in this dark place, but that is when I could do that, that's what allowed me to overcome those. And I wasn't in overcoming my opposition and my competition. I was truly my competition. Like,
Yeah.
I was trying to beat me up. And then when I
Yeah.
do that, ain't no way you're gonna beat me up. Like, let's rock. And so the things that I'm able to step into, the reason I can go against my wife and my best friend's advice to keep me safe and comfortable was because I knew what I was capable of and I wasn't willing to settle for less than what I believe I deserve in life.
Yeah. So I want to, before I'm going to ask you one last question, but I kind of want to just go back to this point that you made for listeners to hear again, because I think this idea of the small voice and the big voice is
Yeah,
really important.
I
And
agree.
in my experience with, looking back, lots of times we can look back and say, oh, yeah, that voice was there. Like when I made a decision that I made it with my mind instead of my intuition, but I knew because there was a little voice that was saying this, but there was a louder voice that was saying whatever it was saying. And that little voice, like, I think of it as sort of way back in the cerebellum, like
Yeah,
way there. I used to say it was like it's in a Tupperware, seal-proof Tupperware box, but it's bouncing around, like trying to get out.
yeah.
And I think that's a huge piece. I want to ask you before we have to close, what do you want people to know? What do you want the
Mm.
listeners to know more than anything? What do you want to leave people with?
It's just one of those, it's the age old thing that we are vastly more powerful than we can comprehend. That is it. We found ways to simplify these things down, but in the simplification, we've lost the weight of it. And by
Mm,
by it, I mean the idea of limiting beliefs, the idea of just kind of being pacified by simplistic things, the idea of that we just convince ourselves that we're not supposed to have. Like, it's been simplified, but the truth is, every single person that I have met that's at a high level, at some point there was like this. They popped the seal and they broke out of that place. Like, I
yeah,
was in a room recently with people that some guys, yeah, 90. He simply said it without even batting an eye. It wasn't rude. But he's like, yeah, I got like a 90-acre ranch, 40,000 square foot home. And he has a place in his house that the shoes, it looks like a Foot Locker in his house, right? I'm talking, he had lit up and everything. I'm like, this is wild. And I loved it. And the reality is, you get to talking to him, regular guy, but at some point, like, there was a little switch. And
yeah,
then you start to realize how powerful you are. Like, for me, I function at a certain level, and I'm actually in a really unique new stage of, like, opening up the gates because I function at a place that has kept me comfortable. I've had a place where I got a great marriage and I got great kids, and I've had a lot of my own internal beliefs that I think I'm just noticing, like, "Damn, I could have been so much farther ahead." Not to knock where I am, because 'cause I'm doing great, but I'm like, "I could be doing greater and then greater for other people." And so I want people to grasp is you really have to go in and rally your stuff up sometimes. You gotta take a
yeah,
look and say, like, really ask the question, are you doing the absolute best you could ever do? And if the answer is no, it will give you fear. Like, it gives me some trepidation knowing what I'm about to step into and do actively as a human. At the same time, I go, but that's when I find the best of me, when I challenge
yeah,
myself because I can show up and battle that guy. But I need to know what fight to fight. I now know what fight to fight. And when you do that, you elevate. Like, the goal for me is the next 4 or 5 years that you look at me and go, "Holy, how'd that guy get up there?" Like, but it's not to say I'm doing it against other people or to make people look bad, but just because I can. I wanna see me rise, but Imma serve people on the entire way of doing it, but I am not unique. Everybody can go after this. They just have to find a
yeah.
way to step in, look at themselves differently, and be committed to developing that new identity with them by doing things that scare the crap out of them intentionally. Like we call it a dark work experience. It's a genuine, like you design your process, you lean in, you do some uncomfortable stuff. But I've never seen somebody push hard to develop something and get it and go, I don't know, it wasn't worth it. Like it's always worth it, like, and it's not that the thing you get, it's who you become.
Well, and I want to just elevate that to even like a win-win-win, right? You, your people, but also higher consciousness because it comes back to me so often. Howard Thurman's quote: "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is more people who have come alive."
I agree. Hell yeah, it does.
Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate you.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.